Dear German clarinet friends, welcome. My name is Kornel Wolak and it is my pleasure to greet you from my home in Toronto, Canada. Hi. First of all, my thanks go to Flavia Feudi and das Klarinettenzimmer for hosting this video and for introducing me and my work to the German clarinet community. I am aware that there are quite a few clarinetists in Germany already who have heard my presentations online and have purchased my books. I wanted to thank you for your support and kind comments on my teaching and on my materials. For those of you who have not heard of me yet, let me briefly introduce myself. My music education began back in Poland, where I am originally from. So if I were to greet you in Polish, it would go like this. Witam I pozdrawiam was wszystkich bardzo serdecznie. However, all these years later, I am living in Canada, where I am a clarinet professor at Queen's University, where I teach a group of very nice and dedicated students who are aiming to become future music teachers. That really demands of me to be able and competent to explain to them all of the intricacies of clarinet technique, which is easier said than done. Just like most of you, at heart, I am a performer. I have toured and performed concerts in many countries. Well, unfortunately not in Germany yet, but I hope that will change soon. I can say that I have been enjoying a most rewarding performing career for nearly 2 decades. So that's been going great and it is still growing. If you'd like to get more familiar with my touring projects, please check me out on YouTube or go to my website at kornelwolak.com. But I am not here today to talk about my performing career. Instead, I'd like to tell you about my research in clarinet technique and pedagogy, which are both very close to my heart. Let me begin with saying that regardless of which part of the world we find ourselves as clarinetists and regardless of what equipment we use, clarinetists have very important goals in common. We all strive for beautiful sound, expressive phrasing, flawless articulation and technique, good intonation, rhythm, etc., etc. But above all, ideally, we try to be able to blend all these skills together with ease and without the risk of any injuries. And in order to acquire that understanding, and to better myself as a teacher, I began a serious collaboration with a group of scientists from the Speech-Language Pathology department at the University of Toronto in the fall of 2015. The general project is called Oral Dynamics in Clarinet Playing, developing a new, evidence-based teaching method. The research is geared towards fostering a better understanding of the clarinet embouchure in order to further advance woodwind pedagogy. And based on our research, I wrote 2 manuals on 2 perhaps most important aspects of clarinet playing: embouchure and articulation. The general premise of articulation types for clarinet is that articulation needs to be clear and consistent if one wants to properly communicate musical ideas on the instrument. In the book, I outline 4 basic yet most important characteristics of clarinet staccato, which are clarity, speed, flexibility, and consistency. All of them maintained with ease in every register and in all dynamics. And we all know how challenging that can be. However, out of the 4, the most important one is consistency. Staccato without consistency is more like a game of luck rather than a solid technique. So We should always strive for a consistent, clear, and flexible staccato at any speed. And how does one learn that? My somewhat simplified answer is through understanding of how it all works and a lot of repetition, of course. Because the more we know and understand, the easier it is for us to translate it into an actual skill of tonguing. This is why I divided the book into 2 sections. In the introduction, I talk about the origins of the clarinet embouchure, including the Unter- and Übersichblasen embouchure types, and how they have impacted the types of articulation that have been developed on the clarinet. That's very interesting, and we know from history that the German clarinet school played an enormous role in those developments. In the main body of the book, I present various articulation types available to us. They range from chest articulation, single tonguing, double tonguing, on the reed multiple tonguing, synthetic speed tonguing, through vertical and lateral tonguing, all the way to various ways of producing flatter tonguing and slap tongue. Each articulation type is clearly explained through text and very informative figures. I also explain why certain articulation types work better than others. For instance, why double tonguing gets progressively more difficult in the higher register and the lateral tonguing doesn't. With the scientific evidence at hand, I went as far as to suggest that we learn and master more than 2 staccato types and use them interchangeably in our performance. Say, in order to maintain the speed of our staccato, it is advisable to switch back and forth between single tonguing, double tonguing, vertical tonguing, or lateral tonguing in one's actually musical phrase, if needed. The general conclusion is that the more technical solutions we have at our disposal, the more free and expressive we can be. And I believe most of you would agree with me on that one. If you would like to know more about the ways of how to perform them step by step, you may find all of the details in the book. Let's talk about the sound, which is our voice on the clarinet. There are volumes and volumes written about clarinet sound, but what interests me as a teacher is what do I physically have to do in order to produce a beautiful sound? Aside from the equipment, physically, the tone quality is controlled by finding the right proportions between the position of the lower lip on the reed, jaw pressure, tongue position, and air pressure. These 4 elements control our sound. The next big question is, how do I train my embouchure to consistently produce beautiful sound? And that question is what, with help of the scientific evidence, I attempted to answer in my second book. Our embouchure is made up of groups of tiny mini muscles that simply need to be trained and conditioned, just like any other muscle in our body. This is why I propose a set of non-musical embouchure exercises. These are designed to gain more control over the lips, the jaw, and the hair. Well, the idea of having separate exercises for different embouchure parts is similar to the work of athletes, who work on developing specific groups of muscles in order to improve their overall performance and to incorporate that newly gained control into the final task. And it is exactly the same with us and our musical performance. Let me give you an example. One of the most common issues, especially in the case of beginners, is tightness of the lower jaw. The more lower jaw pressure, the more pressure on the lower lip from the lower front teeth, which causes lower lip pain. In some extreme cases, even pain in the lower jaw joint, commonly known as TMJ. So it is of great importance that we control the jaw pressure applied to our embouchure. And to do that, I propose a drill called Bite Me Not. In my book, I offer 4 drills to gain lip control, 2 to control jaw pressure, 4 to control your tongue position, and 2 drills for your air pressure. One of my goals was to emphasize how much effort, thinking and attention we can still put into our growth as clarinetists, regardless if we are amateurs or professionals. We should never stop improving. We need to maintain our technique throughout our lives. Because at the end, what makes us more happy is when we can play beautifully and freely without struggle or pain. Well, it is a long road indeed, but nevertheless, it is important to stay on it and to keep working in an organized manner. Dear friends, before I greet you goodbye, I would like to express that it is my hope that some of you will find these materials helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me at any point if you have any questions or suggestions. I am always open to new ideas and to your constructive criticism. You can find me and my books at kornelwolak.com or simply find me on Facebook and give me a shout. My warmest regards to all of you, and I wish you happy clarinetting.